here we are sitting at the end of July, and the Mets are now irrelevant. And yesterday I heard these special ticket prices now for $100. 4 tickets, 4 Cokes, 4 hot dogs, 4 pretzels. That's all you need to know. As soon as I heard that, I was like, it's over. And this was before they were getting rid of David Robertson. That basically signals we're done. And I don't care what you say. He's your closer. You're done. But I will say their starting pitching has been better. Sengo was good last night, and then the heavens opened up, and the Mets ended up winning the game for them. Good for them, but it's also a real reality that look, we spent $350 million on this team, and we got nothing. And quite frankly, they're doing the right thing. I think this is all something that we saw coming. You probably before most of us, but now there's the reality that they just sent their closer, as you said, to the Marlins. I mean,
how embarrassing is that?
It's not as embarrassing as the Denver Broncos were last year, I guess.
Right, yeah, of course. But, I mean, this really is the Marlins, who have, of course, in their history, I've watched them win 2 World Series championships in the span since I've been a Mets fan. But still, for the most part, the Marlins are a joke. They've always been bad, but they've been a thorn in the side of the Mets forever. I mean, think about, back in 2007 and 2008 and these games against the Marlins towards the end of the season, and they would always end up beating you. And now they have this really good season seemingly out of nowhere. The Mets are one of the biggest jokes in the game, them and the San Diego Padres, and the Mets are trading away. The Marlins are buyers, the Mets are sellers. And the Mets just traded their closer in a season where the Marlins have a shot and they don't. They traded their closer to Miami. I know that we were trending in this direction, but those facts are quite amazing. And then there's the macro view of what that means for this team. And there's the micro view of the fact that Billy Epler decided to make this deal with Miami all these days. Now, you think Thursday night, you still have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then all of Tuesday up until the trade deadline at 4 p.m., and he decides to make this deal now, where you would think as you get closer to a trade deadline that there's going to be more deals, you big guys against each other, all these things. And all you hear is how the Mets, and even Steve Cohen said it himself, needed to replenish the farm system with arms. Now, I know David Robertson, you're talking about expiring contracts and all this stuff. He's owed $3 million. He's an older pitcher. But still, what do you get back? 2 rookie guys who were like 17, 18, 19 years old. 2 rookie ball guys. Neither one of them are pitchers.
Well, you got to.
Neither one of them.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're going to criticize them for not trading. We're going to criticize them for trading.
I'm fine trading with them. I'm
fine. We're going to be criticizing who they're getting back. We don't even know who these guys are.
But here's the thing. If you would have told me, because they've gone out and traded for arms before, and you say, okay, they said they were going to replenish the system with young arms, and that makes sense. When you go out and you get 2 guys that are both position players that really have no history in the minors at this point, they're 2 guys at rookie ball, and you make that deal like 4 days before the trade deadline, there are legit criticisms there. Yeah, we don't know who these players are, fine. But if this happened right at the trade deadline and they would have got some young arms in here, then I would have said, okay, he probably waited to the last minute. He pit some teams against one another and whatever. But at this point, Billy Epler doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. So, but they did the right thing in the sense of trading David Robertson, and they got to trade more guys, too.
They got to trade more guys.
They have to.
3 or 4 guys, bring more young guys up here. And, we can watch watch their minor league team and watch these young guys at least get a chance. For the guys that get a chance, it's a chance of a lifetime, for the Beatties and the Alvarezes of the world. And, guys like that, that's really now what you want to see. And you want to see whether or not they can have the last couple months of a season where they can put something together. Vientos as well, who has not been what everybody thought he was going to be up here. You know that. I mean, we were screaming at the beginning of the season, get him up here, get him up here, get him up here. What has he done?
Nothing.
Right. I mean, so you got to be careful about saying you want all these guys up here. But now's the point where this is what you do, kind of go through. You bring these young guys up here now and see whether or not there's anything there, whether or not they can give you anything moving forward. I don't know. But, he spent $350 million. He tried. Just goes to show you cannot buy a championship, and I don't care what sport you're in. And I don't totally agree, or I don't agree at all with what Sean Payton said about trying to buy, a championship and being on Hard Knocks and the Jets this and the Jets that, and it was the worst coaching out in Denver. I said, that's an inaccurate statement. That is a 100% inaccurate statement. Richie Kotite won 4-32 for the Jets.
I'm not a genius.
And he got replaced by, the mentor for Sean Payton, and that would be Bill Parcells. I don't ever remember Bill Parcells ever going after Richie Kotite. Do you?
I don't. That was a long time ago for me, man.
Do you remember anything like even remotely close to what
No.
Sean Payton just did?
No.
And how he torched the previous. I think he did it because he was able to torch the previous ownership. The Broncos changed hands ownership-wise.
Right.
And I think he took a veiled shot at the previous GM, of course, Nathaniel Hackett. Of course, the Jets signing Aaron Rodgers. I guess he forgot that, they went after Drew Brees when he was the coach of the New Orleans Saints. I guess he forgot all that.
Sure.
And how many times were they readjusting contracts, and then he ended up getting suspended for a year because of freaking Bounty Gate. I mean, if there were anybody that should just put their head down, be a good coach, and bring the best out of your team and your player, it should be him. He shouldn't be taking veiled shots at people around, especially guys he doesn't even know.
Well, it wasn't even veiled. I mean, he went right after him. I mean,
he doesn't know Nathaniel Hackett. They have no relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised that he decided to go that route, and also, the Nathaniel Hackett stuff. I mean, we sat here and said how much of that team was a disaster last year, and he probably had a lot to do with that. But as Sean Payton, you can't say anything about it. As the guy that comes in is now the new coach of the team. What I thought was worse was the fact that he was projecting the Jets to have a miserable season.
Yeah, because they won the offseason like the Broncos won the offseason last year.
I mean, that to me was really bad. Now, if he ends up being right, then he could say, hey, I told you so. But the one example he didn't give, because remember he gave the example of Washington back in the day when they spent all that money and brought in Deion Sanders, and he gave that example. And then he brought up the Jets this year and everything they did. Well, the one example he didn't give of one that worked out was Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Because it wasn't just Tom Brady that came over. Leonard Fournette came over. Rob Gronkowski comes out of retirement. And that ended up being that big team assembling. Antonio Brown, a big team being assembled. And you could have said the same thing about them. And they ended up winning the Super Bowl.
I'll tell you one thing. If I'm Rob Saleh, and I'm sure he was. I didn't see his comments. I kind of read through some of the stuff that was online. But, he should be pissed, man. I can't wait for that game.
Yeah, week 5, Jets at Broncos. Too bad it's not here, but yeah. And the Broncos, I don't know if they're going to do a complete 180 under Sean Payton. But, I mean, Sean Payton's also a guy that the second that Drew Brees was done, he was out of there.
But I got to tell you that Sean Payton knows what it takes to turn a team around because you saw Bill Parcells do it to the Jets.
Yeah.
All the Jets needed was a little discipline, a couple of Bill's players, from his past to kind of clean up the locker room a little bit and raise the expectations and the rules around the building. Now, what Sean is also talking about was how lax it was around the building and how everybody was a complete mess. And there were, Russell Wilson had his own office and all this other crap that we were hearing about. And, they couldn't get plays called. They had all these pre-snaps penalties. And I'm like, I know exactly what he's talking about because I lived through it. I saw it. And, when the head man doesn't hold everybody accountable for whatever reason, whether it be, his first time in that situation like Nathaniel Hackett found himself, or just a different way of doing things because the players are different now than they were back when we played.
Yeah.
And so Parcells takes over the Jets. And I'll never forget this. All he did was pretty much he had a pretty good roster because, they spent like $80 million on free agency that offseason. The offseason before Parcells took over. So there were some pretty good players in there. He went out and traded for Kevin Mawai, if you remember.
Yeah.
And he basically, started holding people accountable and running hard practices and running hard meetings. And, if you didn't play well, you didn't practice well, guess what? You're not going to play on the field. So he instilled the discipline that is required to be a good football team, just like Brian Daboll did here. He not only did he get the best out of Daniel Jones, But, he ran a practice the way a practice is supposed to run, and he was a coach the way you're supposed to coach. And you're supposed to get in the players' faces. You're supposed to coach them hard. And that's what Parcells did. And I saw, I think Parcells, I guess, was over at practice the other day or yesterday, and he went up to Daniel Jones, throw it to the open guy. And I'm like, I could just hear that like being yelled at Phil Simms every freaking day. You know what I mean? So,
of course.
Sean Payton knows what needs to be done, but it's really, really unfortunate and really looks bad that he would just basically call out Nathaniel Hackett, the previous GM, the owner. There's 20 sets of dirty hands. I mean, that kind of crap.
Right, and that as bad as that was, this was the quote.
He should have said it when he was an announcer for Fox.
Right, exactly, where he basically said nothing, and then he ends up doing it here when he's the head coach, which is a totally different thing. When you're an analyst, let it fly. When you are a head coach and you're part of that group and the 32 and the respect that you're supposed to have for your opponents and your brethren in the coaching industry, then it's really, it makes you look bad. But this was the thing that was shocking to me. So you're saying that Bill Parcells never, you can remember, trashed Richie Kotite once he took over.
I don't ever remember him doing that. No, I don't.
I can't ever remember a head coach in the NFL basically predicting that a team is going to blow up and have a bad season.
And they're on their schedule.
That's exactly what he did here. He goes... And the quote starts, it doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed. And that happened here. Part of it was their own fault relative to spending so much effing time trying to win the offseason. The PR, the pomp and circumstance, marching people around and all this stuff. We're not doing any of that. The Jets did that this year. You watch. I can see it coming. I can see it coming. He's now predicting that the Jets are going to have a similar season than the Broncos had last year.
I'll tell you what, man.
It's crazy.
I would circle that. Like if I were Rob Saleh, I'd walk in there today, and I'd have the Broncos written on the board, and I would use that as not just against the Broncos and Sean Payton. I would use that against the entire NFL.
Oh yeah.
This is what everybody is saying. And by the way, Sean Payton also doesn't understand that. The Jets didn't want Hard Knocks.
Yeah, of course. Right.
They were told you're having Hard Knocks.
Right. They of course, were fighting against it. And it was the last thing they wanted to do. And he also he threw Hard Knocks in there. He goes, Hard Knocks, all of it. I could see it coming. I mean, it is amazing. Like, just think about some of the stuff. Like, just imagine. So Kyrie Irving re-signs with the Dallas Mavericks. Everybody who's an analyst is like, this guy's going to sink that organization. He sunk it last year. What a terrible sign.
He has sunk a lot of organizations.
Yeah, right. So imagine just Greg Popovich, for an example, just coming out in preseason going, you could just see it coming. I mean, Kyrie Irving is just blowing up all these organizations. He's going to destroy Luka Doncic. Like, this is going to be a total mess. I could see it coming. Nobody would ever do that.
Thanks so much for watching the video.
Please like and subscribe.
And don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified when we're dropping new content.